convert to compel. Welcome, judges, parents, faculty, and of course, students, to the 31st Annual Benoit Salisbury Senior Oratorical Contest. Contest is one of our school's most important events, and it has been an honor for Mr. Thibodeau and me to be part of this extraordinary competition. And it is indeed a competition. The rules, however, are pretty straightforward. Seniors choose a topic, prepare a speech that must be between 3 to 5 minutes long. Mrs. Smith and Mr. Stone will act as our timekeepers. They will hold up a green card to indicate 3 minutes to the judges. They will hold up a green card with 4 to indicate 4 minutes, and then, hopefully not, but a red card with 5 minutes, because students will be penalized for going under or over the time limit. The students do not know the order in which they will be called, and I will ask you to not applaud as they are walking towards the podium. So again, do not applaud as they are walking towards the podium. After they finish, absolutely. Please give them all of the support and thanks and encouragement that you can. Studies have shown that America's #1 fear is public speaking. #2, death. So it is indeed a very courageous thing that these people you see seated behind me are doing, especially in front of a group of their own peers. I know that you will give them your undivided attention, courtesy, and the respect that they so richly deserve. And so now I will ask this year's participants in the Benoit Salisbury Senior Oratorical Contest to please stand and proceed to the chorus room. I remind you not to applaud as they are coming to the stage. And can I ask the lighting to please go down to half, the house lights to half, please? And again, they do not know, so the first person is being told right at this minute that they are going to begin. So no applause, and then afterwards it's fine. And so our first contestant is Mr. Max Bado. No applause. No applause.
Pride. A feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. This is often viewed as a dangerous emotion, a toxic way to think, even one of the 7 deadly sins. I used to believe that being too proud would lead to arrogance and overconfidence, and for a long time I was too scared to be proud and confident in who I was. Pride keeps us moving towards our goals and drives us to succeed. We don't write those ILPs for nothing. Well, actually we do. But in terms of accomplishing our real goals, I wish someone told me 3 years ago that I should always take pride in who I am, what I do, and what I believe. Through my experience playing the saxophone and learning about music, I have learned this valuable lesson about pride and why it is not something that should be avoided. It is a strong belief of mine that all children should have a music education in their school. Music students statistically have higher test scores. They learn that perfection is not an impossible standard. They work together to achieve a common goal, and perhaps most of all, music builds relationships that last a lifetime. Over the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of working with students at Anna McCabe Elementary School. Assisting in the teaching of a huge group of 5th graders who have never picked up an instrument before is a daunting task, and one that requires a lot of patience. As you may know, Fifth graders and things that make very, very loud noises don't mix very well. But I persevered, and by the end of the year, they had made a lot of great progress as a band and as young musicians. I attended their concert in the spring of that year. While the music didn't necessarily sound good, knowing where they started and the fact that I had a role to play in their progress is something for which I am very proud. Taking pride in others is a strange feeling to me, but honestly, I find it incredibly rewarding. I love the feeling that I have had a positive impact on someone's life and can relish in the joy that they feel in their accomplishments. I learned the lesson of taking pride in my own hard work through the music department here at SHS. When I was a freshman, I looked up to the upperclassmen in band. To me, they were an unattainable entity, a point that I didn't think I would ever reach, and I believed it was simply a waste of my time to try. I mean, I enjoyed playing the saxophone. It was never something that I thought I would be good at. However, a few years passed and those seniors graduated, and I realized that these aspirations were not unattainable, and I could excel at the saxophone. My goals started out small: play through this passage, get through this piece. Before I knew it, I was playing at a much higher level. My dreams were also much larger. Get a superior rating at solo and ensemble. Place first on my instrument at Allstate. Get into my top choice music school. All it took was a little effort and, of course, a lot of self-encouragement. My band director from the Rhode Island Youth Philharmonic told me, "The saxophone is the easiest instrument to play poorly." This quote has remained with me since last year because it always reminds me that nothing comes easy. People may tell you that your goal is small or easy, but they're wrong. Any aspiration that you've achieved with your hard work and dedication is worth feeling proud of. Throughout my life, specifically my years in high school, I've thankfully learned that pride isn't something that should be avoided. I mean, face it, if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to help you? The feeling of pride is what keeps people moving towards their goals. Over the last 4 years, I've worked really hard and I'm proud of myself. I was accepted into 2 prestigious music schools. I ranked #1 on tenor sax at Allstate 2 years in a row. And I did all of this by working hard. You can say I'm just flexing right now, but I don't care, because I'm proud of myself and it feels good. As a musician and as a person, you always have to keep moving forward. As Rock Lee says, my motto is to be stronger than yesterday. If I have to, I'll be stronger than half a day ago, even a minute ago. After all, pride isn't some deadly sin. It can be a force that keeps you moving towards your goals. Whatever time you have left in high school, always remember to use your pride as a motivation to make you stronger than you were yesterday. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelsey Croft.
My parents like to tell me the story of their daughter, the wallflower. Sunshine strands grew from her head, and sky blue eyes painted the world with an accepting gaze. She liked to tell stories, play pretend, and most of all, she liked to watch the world as it spun lazily on its axis. My parents' favorite story is of how she would never say hi to the other children, the other flowers. She would just sort of follow them around, close. Uncomfortably close. Just staring with bright, wide eyes. And her parents' attempt to deter the awkwardness with a, "Come on, Kelsey, just say hi," failed epically with a meek, monotone little, "Hi." Quiet and cautious, I was an elementary school teacher's dream. And I was genuinely okay with having this persona as it acted as a shield from all my fear and all my insecurity. A shield from the world that I'd just like to watch. For years, I was comfortable behind this armor, as long as I had the pen and paper to keep me company. After all, it was always safer to write about people falling out of trees and breaking their arms than actually climbing the tree myself. However, the protection didn't last long and sent my middle school memories in a perpetual winter, a time in which no flowers grow. I can remember, in middle school, sitting alone in my mint green bedroom, watching the cell phone screen, moving only for school and a once-a-week soccer practice. My friends and family begged for me to try something new, to take a risk and get involved. But it's not like I wanted to waste away my youth on a blue-lighted screen. I was just too afraid to try anything else. It's like, imagine you're in line for a roller coaster, and you're really excited for this roller coaster. And you begged your parents to go on this ride, even though it's a 5-hour wait in the hot summer sun. And every couple of minutes, the line inches forward, and another swarm of butterflies appear in your stomach. But then you get closer, and you can see the ride now, and you feel the track shake, and you can hear the high-pitched screams a little more clearly now. And maybe you have all those back problems that the poster warned you about. Maybe you realize that this ride isn't for you, so you kind of just bail. That's what my Gallagher life had been like for me, waiting for a thrill, but never actually following through. As I approached high school my freshman year, I did not want to keep living that way, waiting and watching, and waiting. So I tried for the soccer team, and I didn't make varsity, and I never would. But at least I had the experience of JV, meeting a whole new group of people, learning all these new techniques, feeling the grass beneath my feet, and sparking a competitive drive within me that I didn't know I possessed. It was something. I was something. Progress. I was no longer that small child just following. I was doing. I was learning. I was learning that taking risks and expanding my boundaries was okay. So that's what I did. In sophomore year, when I asked that boy out and he said no, I was okay. In junior year, when I dropped soccer and went for cross country, I made varsity. And in my senior year, when presented with the idea of speaking, I decided that the quiet girl, the wallflower, had something to say. And she wants to say this. She wants to say that fear is no friend of yours, whoever you are, freshman, junior, sophomore, jock, nerd, wallflower. If you let fear take you on its whirlwind of a roller coaster, it won't let you go. It'll grab you by the throat and squeeze your aspirations away. But look at me now, standing here in front of you, absolutely terrified in absolute bliss. And as I stand here and look out into the sea of tired yet hopeful eyes, I notice that there's a future for everyone, and there's always something holding them back from it. Whoever that is, don't let fear be the controlling factor. Fear can be a motivator, but only if you actually get up and do something about it. So, as I leave this podium today and walk across the stage at graduation, I want to leave one piece of advice. Don't be afraid to truly and authentically live. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. John Spalding.
Good morning, everyone. I want you to think back to a time where you failed. Now, think about the emotions that you felt at that time. You most likely don't remember the full intensity of those emotions, but there's a good chance that you felt a blow to your self-worth. Maybe you felt some frustration that you didn't live up to your own expectations. In our lives, we're always taught that failure is bad. The pressure from our parents, mentors, and friends to succeed, to say the least, is quite suffocating. This anxiety continues to tighten around us until in our minds we have to be a perfect being who achieves everything that they set out to do. Then, when we fail to meet these impossibly large expectations, we often find ourselves trying to fix the parts of ourselves that we perceive as broken. What if I told you, though, that you're not broken, but in fact, you're only human? Yes, you heard me right. You are only mistakes or fail at something. A failed task or grade is not the end of the world, because you still have a long way to go. Our success seems to be chalked up to one word: performance. How we perform often dictates our own individual paths in life, even if we are experiencing some kind of success in our lives. Just like a one light switch, one touch can put us into darkness. This leaves you blind, walking through the dark with seemingly no direction in your life, failing left and right. I experienced this when I moved back to Rhode Island in 2016 after living in Maine for the majority of my childhood. Before moving back here, I was reprimanded by my father for being a disappointment and not accomplishing anything through my life. Even though I had done anything that he had asked me to from when I was a small child, to him, I was a failed son. When I moved to Rhode Island shortly after my parents separating, I was obviously torn. I would always think to myself, am I really a failure? Is everything that I've done amounted to nothing? This defeatist mindset, coupled with my parents' recent separation, definitely had a negative effect on me and my subconscious. It led to more failures in both my personal life and allowed me to fail my expectations in my academics in my sophomore year. I thought that I would remain a failure for the rest of my life, that I wouldn't be able to recover from this trauma. But one great thing about being human is that we adapt. While I initially failed in most of my relationships, I had rebounded. I might have been a failure to my father, but I started to see something that he didn't. I saw results. I saw myself making connections with friends who saw something in me. I used this momentum to rewire my mind. After long talks with my family and some self-reflection, I was finally ready to take a risk. I finally decided to put myself out into the world and broke down the walls that I had built around myself. I was ready to be judged. No longer would I run away from my fear of failure. I reconnected with people I had lost contact with too, and I was ready. I hadn't just proved my dad wrong, I had proved to myself that I was worth something. I had a purpose. But from this purpose, I realized something. This journey of self-discovery on my newfound success was linked to one thing: failure. I found out that maybe failure isn't all that bad. In a strange way, failure is actually good for us. This idea for the past year has thrust me forward, and I've finally found a way to improve myself. We can use our failures to learn more about ourselves and iron out our edges. I have gone from someone who felt like he was hopeless socially and would never find himself to an actor singing and dancing on stage. An individual who had to prepare himself before he talked to an acquaintance, to a person who now feels he can talk to anyone. My grades also had a turnaround. My grades also had a turnaround. I have finally returned to a similar form from before. I am discovering myself. I am no longer afraid of failing, but have decided to use my failures as experiences to help me live my life. When people tell you not to fail, they're wrong. If you begin to use your failures as a learning experience to walk in the light, you will ultimately experience success and your life will change. As Winston Churchill once said, success consists of going failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. I encourage you to come and experience success. Don't fall into the trap that failure is bad. Learn from your mistakes, avoid perfection, and live your life without fear of being judged for your mistakes. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Yosua Young.
Say your clock's ahead by 5 minutes and your watch is by 2 minutes. This will save some breaths on the way to your commute, date, or interview. Stay ahead of the times, as some might say. While you are here, be involved in the hour of discourse. You are accountable for your actions and observed through your words. Listen and communicate. That is your obligation in every connection. Do not be silent. Do not be ignorant. The world needs your participation. Chasms have been overcome by the mights of masses in cooperation. Find your role and play your part. This life is a rite of passage. Invest in assets, study hard for your classes, and please recycle plastic. Be open to understanding the unknown. That is space that can be used for love. Be responsible enough to pay attention to aspects outside of your perspective. Walls are not necessary. Strive towards a bipartisan effort to at least understand. Do not attack people's mannerisms in a conflict. If you do, remember what goes around comes around. Instead, engage in healthy debates to broaden your outlook on this reality. It is necessary for you to become a powerful, dynamic individual. Be flexible and reliable. There will be times where you will have to make sacrifices. If you continue education after high school, there will be exams that you will have to study for and pass. Degrees and licenses are earned. Gather your ethic to study. It will be your best tool for achievement. Get used to knowing the answer to the question to the asked. Your job and grades will depend on it. Be active in your craft. Find materials and follow techniques. Process is fundamental to progress. You will need to research instructions. Practice induces precision. Build calluses if you want to get better. Composure will reduce stress in making decisions. So get out of your comfort zone to not have one. Masters know their craft from being enthralled in participation. Be grateful that you can participate in learning so freely from people who are passionate about teaching you. These mentors' impressions and lessons will linger. That is definite. You get what you want out of this. Use your time wisely. This has been given to you and will allow you to succeed. No one else will do it for you. You will find your own way without a doubt. That is, if you are searching. While being present in the classroom, you are at least given the opportunity to try and succeed. So why wouldn't you start there? Is it not interesting or too hard? Amongst all of us in this room have struggled only to prevail, but that is why we take the tests. Continue on to the next hurdle and never stop running. One step at a time will take you there. We are all at our own pace. Which route you want to take is up to you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Sebastian to Jesus.
Seniors, friends, underclassmen, and teachers. Today, I would like to share my understanding of the world. I want to share my insight on life. And I know not all of you will listen, but it's with great hopes that at least one of you will take what I say and use it as fuel, as motivation to push harder, to love yourself, and to never quit on your dreams. I'm up here today because I have failed. I've failed countless times in my life, whether it be at school, at home, or during performance. Just like everyone else, I have failed. Some people like to think that failure is where it all stops, but sometimes beginnings hide themselves in ends. As kids growing up, all we faced was failure. Taking our first steps, we fell time and time again. However, we did not stop there. We continued to rise, and little by little, inch by inch, we would take tiny steps until we were able to walk. Then we got older. The older we got, the more we learned about the world. And some of us decided it was easier to stay down than to stand back up. The pain of failing is way better than throwing in the towel. Because if I throw in the towel now, I will live day to day with the regret of never fulfilling that task. Tomorrow, I will wake up stronger. But if I quit now, I will wake up no better than I was the day before. And the most disappointing thing I can do to myself is to be the same person I was yesterday. The success of an individual is not measured by the amount of victories you have, but the countless hours spent practicing. All those long nights spent without sleep, those nights spent crying in frustration, those nights where you thought you should hang it all up, these moments, ladies and gentlemen, are what defines a person's success. But know this, the road ahead is very lonely. You will fail more times than you will succeed. And on this road, should you fall, land on your back. Because if you can look up, you can get up. Remember, you may burn out physically, but mentally, you are only limited by self-doubt and fear. Behind every fear is a person that we want to be in life. It was just 4 years ago when I was sitting in the crowd just like you, and I decided then and there I would participate in the senior oratorical, not to win, but for a chance to inspire. I want to tell a story about a challenge I recently faced. Over this winter break, I decided to snowboard for the first time. So my uncle took me to the top of the mountain and said, "Find your way down." You see, going up the mountain, I was burning with excitement, but that quickly changed as my board touched the ground. I fell. That wasn't just one fall. It was countless, relentless falls, and I fell so much that ski patrol took notice. They offered 2 suggestions. One, they could relieve me of this physical pain and embarrassment, or 2, they could take me down in a ski mobile. Or they could take me down in a ski mobile, or I could walk up the mountain and take another path. Now, nothing infuriates me more than giving up on something I said I would do. So my stubborn self decided to walk up the mountain and take another path. And when I reached the second path, it took me a while, but eventually I made my way down. The journey down was one of the most painful experiences in my entire life. Each time I fell, I got back up, because what separates the champions and losers in life is the way we get back up. It was a process of moving a few feet forward at a time, and it wasn't a very large amount of ground gained, but it was something. But if I had learned anything from life, any fight worth winning is a fight not easily won. One step, one punch, one round at a time is what Rocky used to say. If you give up on learning something now, the only person you are cheating is yourself. All of our suffering in life is self-imposed. If we can create them, we can destroy them. Things will always seem to get worse before they get better. Nothing good ever comes that fast. So ask yourself this before I go today. If the world were to end tomorrow, would you be satisfied with what you have accomplished? Would your goals have been met? Would you have told that special person that you love them, treat every day as if it were your last? And I want all of you to close your eyes right now. Place a hand over your heart. Now think of a dream that you may have. And when you finally have that dream, open your eyes. Keep thinking about that dream and listen closely to what I have to say. The saddest thing in life is when talent goes to waste. You see all these young kids that have dreams of being writers, artists, actors, athletes. When they get to the end of their high school career, they're like, man, I can't do this because it's so hard to succeed. Chase that dream. I'd rather live a short life filled with happy and positive memories than a long one spent in a miserable way. Everything you will ever need in life is right here. Stephen Hawking once said, remember to look up at the stars and not at your feet, because however difficult life may be, there's always something you can do, something you can succeed at. You may not live forever, but your legacy will. And that's probably why people say YOLO, right? You only live once. Well, if you do it right, my friend, living once is just enough. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bryce Moroni.
It's senior year, as it appears, and seniors stress with college fears. Seeking validation for what they've done this time of year is by no means fun. But let's take a look back at the last 4. It was no walk in the park, it was more often a chore. But there is one thing in common between then and now, always seeking validation, and I know how. Rough it must be to act every day as a facade of yourself, and be as it may. Some of you are your authentic self, and honestly, it's so nice for your health. I've just re-embraced this but a few weeks ago, and if you look at me now, you would never know what this last year was like, for I lived in a shell. That's no way to live life, from what I can tell. Now, this is not meant to be some sort of cliche. This is simply to educate, to avoid your own dismay. When you find yourself trying to be someone else, all you're really doing is doubting your own self-worth. It happens to us all, nothing to be ashamed about. But when you let it control you, all this evil self-doubt, you become someone else, not your authentic self. You put your own personality up high on the shelf. Choosing fiction over fact, that's our society today. And honestly, it's hard to find someone to portray their authentic self out in the real world for fear from what this world hurled. Lies and deceit to shoot one down, attempting in droves to run authenticity out of town. That would show defeat, something for which we cannot stand, for if we show defeat, it can quickly get out of hand. Underclassmen, be resilient, you must be strong, march to your own beat, sing to your own song. All may not like it, for it is your sound, your song to be heard for those who are bound, to accept you for yourself but nothing more. For you, these years must be less of a chore. I hope for enjoyment for all of you, but that's the same old message, there's nothing new. These years are said to be the best of our lives, but I would rather describe them as a 4-year dive. You dive in, it's nice, the water's just fine, you swim a bit deeper, you begin to feel the brine. Like it's salt, work gets heavier by the 2nd year. If you took too many stressful classes, you'd often shed a tear. For each night became longer, your sleep became less, you begin to realize high school's kind of a mess. But you must swim forward, you must prevail, so you swim even deeper. 3rd year's ship has set sail. College becomes obvious, a sign of success. Want trade school or army? You'll be viewed as less than perfect can be in this quaint little town. So many doctors and lawyers running around, seeking validation through occupation, as it seems. These jobs scream success from what society deems. Working students work harder each and every day, for yes, high school workloads are heavy as it may, but high school won't pay for the finer things in life, for phones, cars, or insurance, things for which they strive. These are some students, but not all. I see some in this crowd who know this story as if it's their own, being read out loud. Now this swim becomes difficult, you feel it in your chest, you swim down much deeper as you try your best. To continue your dive, it is year number 4, back to college acceptance with lots and lots more. Work becomes daily, as homework is too, but to most of us that is but nothing new. Universities and colleges, big plans are set. None of us are prepared to deal with next year's student debt. So here you are, you've swam real deep. What's that? You feel yourself nicely melting to sleep. Then rapidly comes around this time of year. That sleep was not nice, it was drowning, it's clear. But now you've been revived for the next few months. Good luck, class of 2019, there's 66 days to the front. Just try and remember, there's nothing to fear. Yes, graduation is close. Yes, graduation is near. I hope authenticity for you all, and be as it may, I do hope to see you all after we hit graduation day. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Miss Bella Brenner.
Death, darkness, public speaking. These are all things that elicit the experience of anxiety. To get this out of the way, yes, this is a story about anxiety and depression, but no, it's not a story about how it all gets better. To be honest, it doesn't. I've been anxious my whole life, although when I was a child, I did not know it. I didn't understand why sometimes I would get what I call the feeling. For people who don't have anxiety, you may not know what I'm talking about. The feeling is when your stomach clenches, like a boa constrictor wrapping around their prey. I felt like I was being suffocated and could not do anything about it. Back then, I always ignored the feeling, and it seemed to go away. However, as I got older, it took longer and longer for the feeling of anxiety to subside. Eventually, I couldn't breathe or focus. No matter how hard I tried, my brain would jump from worry to worry, like a child on a sugar high. Anxiety had consumed my life, and I had no choice but to finally tell my parents. They brought me to multiple therapists, but talking to someone that I'd never met about how I felt made me even more anxious. By not letting myself cope with my anxiety, it decided that it was lonely, so it introduced a new friend: depression. No longer was I just worried and anxious all the time, but I was also sad and tired. For most people, they are tired because of lack of sleep, but it did not matter how much I slept. Sometimes I would sleep for 16 hours a day or more, and still feel like I was living in a haze. With my life being run by my anxiety and depression, it became very dark, sometimes black. I am not the type of person to sugarcoat anything, so I'm not going to do it now. There were definitely days where I would lie crying on my bathroom floor, thinking that the world and everything around me would be better off if I were dead. But obviously, I did not do anything to harm myself because I'm standing here today talking to you. Nothing was helping, so my parents finally decided to take me to a psychiatrist. He prescribed me medication to help with my depression and balance my serotonin levels. I also found a new therapist that made me feel comfortable letting all of my emotions out. It felt great talking about how I was feeling, and I became happier every time I would go to see her. To be honest, she's probably one of my favorite people in the world. It has been about 2 years since my first therapy and psychiatrist appointments with my new doctors, and I feel better than ever. Also, this past year, I have found a group of friends that light up my life. Whenever I'm with them, the feeling of anxiety and depression goes away, and I feel free. Free from my worries, free from my sadness, and free from whatever life can throw my way. They're what keep me going. I'm not exaggerating when I say I might not be here today without them. When I have a mental breakdown at 1 o'clock in the morning, they are there for me, talking to me on the phone, assuring me that I will be all right. Whenever I become overwhelmed with stress and anxiety, the first people I tell are my pals. They know who they are. They have seen me sob on my bathroom floor until I give myself a nosebleed and shake until I become dizzy. They have also seen me at my happiest. These people are the reason I truly feel blessed with where I am right now. They push me to become a better person and only want the best for me. Every day, it becomes easier and easier to cope with my anxiety and depression, which means that hopefully, one day, I will be cured. With my friends by my side and the tools my doctors have given me, I have hope. Hope that I can not just get through life, but get through life with a smile. So I guess I have to take back my original statement, as I've learned through this journey that it takes time, determination, and understanding to realize that it does get better. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Simon Reese.
Boys are stupid. I once heard a story about a kid who was up in a tree, and he grabbed a branch that was too thick, and he swung. He lost his grip and fell on the ground. Luckily, he was fine. The thing is, boys are stupid. So the kid got back into the tree and did the exact same thing again. This time, he lost his grip and landed harder. You may be wondering where I heard this story. You see, it was the summer of 2012. And I was that boy. I broke both of my wrists swinging out of a tree in my front yard like a hooligan. The worst part wasn't even that I broke both of my arms. It was that I was about to enter middle school. So, if you know anything about middle school stereotypes and stress, you know I just got myself into a pickle. I entered middle school with 2 massive arm-length casts, one blue and one red. I hate to say this in public, but I could not reach my mouth. I mean, my arms were like this all the time. So for weeks on end, I had to take my lunch to the nurse's office for her to spoon feed me like a child. It was awful. Basically, the point is, in middle school, I was known as the kid with the 2 broken arms. And after I got my casts off, I wasn't in the best place. The lack of physical activity made me gain weight, and I was shy. This endured through middle school, and by the time I entered into high school, I had become a timid, self-conscious, short boy. I had almost nothing going for me, except for one thing. I was smart. I had a foothold, I had a starting place. Everyone has a starting place. Whether it's a sport, or a secret talent, or your luscious hair. For me, it was my brain. And after being the kid with the casts, and the short, self-conscious boy, I became the smart kid. Soon it was the end of my sophomore year. Shortly before finals, a couple of crazy kids approached me and asked me to help them study for the Spanish 3 exam. A group on Snapchat was formed, and thus was born a highly exclusive friend group called Grape. don't ask questions, just accept it as a fact. And no, you cannot join. Many have tried, all have failed. I won't name anyone. Well, you know what? Mallory Sanderson tried to join. She was waitlisted. Rape was my stepping stone. I learned how to be more social and to step out of my comfort zone. I was feeling more confident about myself. In fact, after junior year, I was feeling so confident that, you know, I got a hot girlfriend. Senior year arrived, and for the third year, I was playing football. And you know what? I played varsity, but that's not the craziest part. The craziest part is that I played varsity as a linebacker. Never in my life did I believe I'd be playing varsity as a linebacker. Not even as I was playing in the game as a varsity linebacker. Now I'm about to head into college. It's frightening, exciting, and surprisingly very sad. I'm a legal adult. Growing up is never something you realize until after the fact. And as Andy from The Office says, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. What I want every single person in here to know is that who you are now is not the same person you will be in the future. Yes, the kid with the broken arms, the self-conscious short boy, the member of Grape, and the varsity linebacker are all still a part of me, and they always will be. But they are not who I am today, and they are not who I will be in the future. In 9th grade, I would have awkwardly laughed if you told me I'd be the co-host of the senior fashion show. In 10th grade, I would have scoffed if you told me I'd be a varsity linebacker. And in 11th grade, I might have had a heart palpitation if you told me I'd have a girlfriend. Throughout my entire high school career, I've been changing. I've been growing. Life happens, man. You might fall out of a tree and break both of your wrists. That moment doesn't have to define who you are for the rest of your life. Don't settle for what you have. Go out and make a change for the better. Every person in here can be amazing. The unfortunate truth is most of you will take what you have for granted, and you'll never live up to your full potential. I certainly have a long way to go. If you think you're at the top of your game, you've got another thing coming. If you think you've seen it all, look a little harder. If you think you're all grown up, you've got another thing coming. We're all going to change. There's no doubt about that. It's how you choose to grow and how you pick yourself up when you fall down that makes you different. Take it from me. Right now, I'm in the middle of playing a game called Simon Reese, because that's who I am. Who are you? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Megan Kernan.
Good morning. If you ask most people what their high school experience was like, they would say it was filled with hanging out with friends, going to football games, doing schoolwork, and for seniors, working on their portfolios. During the first part of my freshman year, that is exactly how I would have hoped to answer that question in years to come. My freshman year, I was on the tennis team, playing softball and soccer, and getting ready for my dance recital. However, on May 2nd of 2016, all of that was put on hold when my whole world was turned upside down. This was the day that I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Hodgkin's lymphoma is a type of blood cancer that is common in children from ages 15 to 40. At age 15, finding out I had cancer was heartbreaking and painful. It all started a few months before when I came home from dance one night and discovered a lump on the right side of my neck that was almost as big as a golf ball. My mom decided that I would go to the doctors to try and figure out what the lump was. The next day, after the doctor's exam, we still had no idea what was going on. Unfortunately, he had no answers for us. The next month and a half was filled with many blood work appointments, ultrasounds, and medical tests, but none of these things could give my family and me the answers we were looking for. Finally, it was decided that I would have to have a surgery to determine what the lump was. A week before my surgery, the surgeon told my mom and I that he did not think it was cancer, but to prove it to us, I had to have the surgery. On May 2nd, 2016, I went to Hasbro Children's Hospital feeling nervous and anxious. My mom said the surgery lasted for about 45 minutes, close to an hour, but to me, it felt like 10 minutes. When I woke up, the first thing I remember seeing was my mom and my grandma on the right side of my hospital bed with tears in their eyes. At that moment, I knew something was wrong. The surgeon came over to my hospital bed and told my mom that as soon as he made the incision in my neck, he knew right away it was cancer. When I heard this, my heart immediately sank. A million thoughts started running through my mind, like, would I lose my hair? Would I still be able to go to school? Would I have to stop playing sports? And most importantly, would I be okay? It honestly felt like a nightmare, and at that point, all I wanted to do was wake up. The next 2 weeks were filled with many visits to the doctors until it was time to start chemotherapy. I had 4 cycles of chemo that lasted about 4 months, and 11 radiation treatments after that, which took 1.5 months. When chemo started, I continued to go to school because I did not want to miss anything, and I did not want anyone to know something was wrong. I continued to go to school until 3 weeks before the end of my freshman year. The day I lost my hair was the day I stopped going to school. I missed the last 3 weeks of my first year of high school, and I missed my first finals. When my friends found out that I was exempt from finals, they told me I was lucky I did not have to take them. Hearing that made me very upset because I would have given anything to come back to school and take my finals. There were a lot of things I missed out on because of my chemo. The chemotherapy and the medicine I was taking made my immune system very weak, so I could not leave my house for the fear that I was going to get sick. By the time sophomore year started in 2016, I was done with chemotherapy and starting radiation. After 5.5 months, in October of 2016, I was pronounced cancer-free and I started my road to recovery. Today, I can proudly say that I am almost 3 years in remission and almost back to my before cancer self. I was able to start enjoying things again that I missed out on for the longest time. Cancer taught me that you should never take anything for granted because you can never know when it is going to be taken away from you. It taught me to enjoy the little things life has to offer and appreciate everything you have. Cancer chose me. However, I did not give up, and now I am stronger than ever. I guess it really is true what they say. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jonah Major.
Who am I? Why am I here? To answer Admiral Stockdale's question, my name is Jonah Major, and I'm here to talk behind the podium for at least 3, but no more than 5 minutes. For those of you who don't know me, delivering a speech to the entire school that answers the prompt, a piece of advice for underclassmen, is something I do as frequently as I enjoy a vape-free bathroom experience. When asked to comment, friends of mine went on the record to say that this was my first time delivering such a speech, making me quite the novice orator. Apologies in advance to Mr. Salisbury for my inevitable slip-up that cost me the competition. But I'm here today because I have sat in the same seats you are all sitting in right now, listening to people talk. There were some good talks, sure, whose morning isn't made better by hearing Mr. Hopkins deliver his signature, "Good morning, ladies and gents." But there were others that didn't display such proficiency with distinction, to borrow a phrase from our beloved SHS rubric. For example, the class ring salesman who visited my freshman year. Even that fellow seemed indifferent as he fulfilled his obligatory reading of the Herff Jones catalog. If someone were to slip his social security number in between the price charts, I genuinely believe he would have read it out loud with the same listless energy. It was quite dull until I framed it as a joke. This is all some bizarre farce. Me missing class time to be sold a gaudy ring for hundreds of dollars by someone who thinks wearing a graphic tee under his blazer is something us youths appreciate. As soon as I synthesized the situation into a punchline, the rest of the presentation, or lack thereof, flew by. That's my advice to underclassmen. Figure out how to make the mundane funny. Ka-chow! I've responded to the prompt. I'm now being told I have to elaborate? Okay. Take right now, for example. The senior oratorical is no SNL. It's this formal event, I'm not wearing my signature sweatshirt, and everyone on this stage seems to be quite nervous. Sorry, it is actually quite funny. I'm up here sweating in the spotlight, my mouth dry and my tie trying to choke me. Meanwhile, a kid in the back is playing Fortnite. He doesn't care that I poured countless hours into a bizarre attempt at telling an Admiral Stockdale joke 27 years too late. And why should he? Like, I think that a crack at Ross Perot's Running Mate is going to bring down the house? Why am I even doing this? Because Monday, I'll be sitting in AP Calculus next to John Fontaine, struggling to understand the new and improved derivative, plus C. Virtually everyone having forgotten about what I've said today, and I'll make a joke about this. The concept that I entered an event like this to say words like these. We'll laugh, and that's worth it. I hope. During the 4 years we're here, there's a lot of stress, a lot of awkwardness, and a lot of boring in between. I apologize for repeating what you already know, but it's a nice rhetorical device, so I kept it in. But during these 4 years, try and find the perspective that gives you a laugh. For example, in my sophomore year, there was an assignment clarification posted to the classroom at 10:42 p.m., which, in the moment, is rather stressful, but it's also pretty funny. How do you think that'll really go over? We all leap out of bed, crack open our Chromebook, and reanalyze the passage now that we have a fuller understanding of synecdoche and anaphora as it relates to indirect characterization? Kind of fun. It's in the awkward stuff, too. Who isn't a fan of arriving first to class and the subsequent 3 full minutes where you sit in silence while the teacher just checks their emails? Do you say hi? How many emails could they have gotten since the start of last period? Are you supposed to be checking your email? Yeah, it's awkward, but it's also laughable in that weird cosmic sense that everything sort of is. So if you're sitting in the audience right now, bored out of your mind, first of all, I've kind of failed you. Opening with the Stockdale quote, big mistake, I realize that now. Way to lose the crowd, Jonah. And second, remember whatever this was. Did I use one phrase way too much? Possibly. Are you picking up on some weird quirk my voice keeps slipping into? Probably. Do you think I should have cut the Stockdale routine 3 paragraphs ago? I don't know, I'm tired. But, next time you're bored, put yourself in what Dr. Carol S. Dweck would call the mindset. Look for the jokes. They're there, I promise. If you thought this speech was a dumpster fire, laugh. High school can be funny, but it's up to you to find the yucks. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
Our final speaker this morning is Miss Leah Curry.
People joke that I'm a goody two-shoes, and that I always have to be Little Miss Perfect. There may be some truth to that, but after a while, it began to feel like more of a demand than a joke. If I made a mistake, people acted like it was a big deal. But if I did something right, all I heard was, "Of course you did." The small, harmless remarks that people would make made it seem like I wasn't allowed to be anything but perfect. Regardless of how hard I worked or my accomplishments, I could not achieve perfection. So I was never enough for myself. John Locke says, "What worries you, masters you." I placed my value in the hands of other people's perceptions. I was so worried that someone would not like me, I became withdrawn, often choosing not to speak up, over expressing myself, and running the risk of being hated. Then my biggest flaw and insecurity became my body. I looked in the mirror and I saw a face that was too round, shoulders that were too broad, legs that were too muscular, and a reflection that was overweight. I found ways to hide these flaws. Fashion became a makeshift shield. In my mind, dressing nicely would distract from my figure and prevent others from seeing how ugly I really was. For the most part, it worked. I was able to walk through the halls with a mock sense of confidence. But as it turns out, fashion was only a temporary fix to a persistent insecurity. So rather than continuing to hide my imperfection, I thought, why not just make it disappear? I started by cutting out any food groups I deemed to be unhealthy or made me feel heavy. However, my attempts to be healthy escalated into an obsessive relationship with food, and it was no longer about cutting out junk food. It became a game to see how few calories I could consume and how long I could go without eating anything. 1,200 turned to 1,000, and then it became 800 on a cheat day and 300 every other day. Most days, I wouldn't eat until dinner time, and regardless of how late it was, I always worked out after I finished my homework. Any spare time was spent researching various methods of losing weight, and I found myself seeking comfort and advice from websites that promote anorexia and other eating disorders. I was aware that my actions and thoughts were not healthy, and to a degree, I was ashamed at how self-destructive I was being. However, my desire to be skinny and perfect defied any sense of logic, and I wasn't going to quit until I achieved my ideal weight. So I continued counting the number of ribs I could see and making sure my collarbones and hip bones were protruding. I went through life pretending I was okay, when in reality, I was just going through the motions, trying not to faint, and obsessing over every ounce of fat on my body. I was so afraid that someone would stop me that I kept everything a secret. Part of me didn't want to admit that I might have a disorder. How could I justify my attempts to starve myself to those that believed I was intelligent? How could I explain that the figure people saw that some considered beautiful was the same reflection that disgusted me to tears and made me want to hide? I couldn't. So for all that I lacked in calories, I swallowed in an infinite amount of words, thoughts, and emotions until I felt entirely alone. It was just me, my self-abusive thoughts, and a body I hated but couldn't get rid of. I am anything but perfect. I have learned that chasing expectations can only lead to self-destruction. I have sacrificed my mind and my body for the sake of pleasing other people. But I am human. I am a work in progress, and that's okay. We all live with insecurities. This does not mean our insecurities have to become our lives. So don't let yourself be your own worst enemy. You are the master of your own life. Take control of your happiness, because that is the only way to be alive. Thank you.
Speaking before an audience of your peers, especially one of this size, is very difficult. So please join me in again congratulating all of today's senior speakers. The difficult task of scoring the individual speeches is left to our judges. They are Ms. Susan Barron, lecturer in the Department of Communications at Bryant University, Mrs. Virginia Harnoy of the Smithfield School Committee, Ms. Fran Harris, a longtime Smithfield educator of over 40 years, Mr. Tommy Hines, SHS class of 1973, former SHS English teacher, adjunct instructor at Johnson & Wales University, and Mr. Robert Salisbury, former teacher, principal, school committee member, and co-founder of this competition. Thank you, judges. As the tabulators finish their calculations, the following individuals on behalf of our senior speakers. Members of the administration, faculty, and staff for supporting this competition throughout its rich 31-year history. The music department, the maintenance team, and our technical crew. Mrs. Smith and Mr. Stone, our timekeepers this morning. The members of the math department for again acting as our score tabulators. The escorts, Ms. Kelsey and Mr. Hurley. The student council for their generous donation of the awards that will be presented on Honors Night. And the coaches, Mrs. Buckley, Mr. Burns, Ms. Kelsey, Mrs. Carty, Mr. DeCurtis, Ms. Roderick, Mr. Snow, Mr. Spring, and Mr. Zabelli. And finally, on behalf of all the senior speakers and in my own name, I would like to thank Mrs. Dempsey, without whom this event would not and could not take place. I will now ask Mr. Kelly, our principal, to join us on stage to announce the winners.
Let's have a round of applause for Ms. Dempsey. Salisbury in the back, thank you for starting this fantastic tradition. We're honored to continue to keep this going in your honor. So without further ado, our third place winner in the Benoit Salisbury Senior Oratorical Contest is Max Vadalato. Salisbury Senior Oratorical Contest. Second place winner is Simon Reese. And the winner, first place of the Benoit Salisbury Senior Oratorical Contest is Mr. Jonah. If you want to stick around for a little bit, we'll take some pictures up here. Just a reminder, tonight at 6 p.m. at Scituate High School, we have a unified basketball game, so if you guys can get out to that at 6 at Scituate, that would be great. Enjoy the rest of the day. Have a great weekend. You guys are dismissed to period G.